Hey folks, Jordan with the Young Turks and TYT Politics. I am coming to you live from Little Creek Camp. Little Creek Camp is in Williamsburg, Iowa. It is a protest camp against the Dakota Access Pipeline. If you don't know, Dakota Access Pipeline goes through North Dakota, South Dakota, and Iowa. So here, much smaller than what we saw in North Dakota. There's about 40 people. They just opened a few weeks ago. And they are here not only resisting the pipeline, but also resisting a lot of the corruption and ways of the U.S. government. And there are also camps like this sprouting and popping up all around the country, actually. Corporate media isn't really telling you about it, but there's camps opening up here, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Florida. Might be some happening in Oregon. So it is really, it's interesting. And the mood here is a little bit different than Standing Rock. There's not, standoffs with the police every day or things like that. Right now in Iowa, there are eminent domain cases going on connected to the Dakota Access Pipeline. So if the Dakota Access Pipeline is to, in those cases, if the landowners win and the pipe must come out of their land, then, hold on. Let me know if you guys can hear me better now. 1 2 1 2 3 2 3 2. Can you hear me, commenters? All right, I'm gonna keep going, and hopefully you can hear me. So, what I wanted to talk about, if you didn't know, I'm at Little Creek Camp in Iowa. This camp is a resistance camp against the Dakota Access Pipeline. The Dakota Access Pipeline does go through Iowa also. It's completely built already, but there is lawsuits going on in the background, eminent domain lawsuits. Landowners who had their land seized by this greedy oil company, frankly, have sued. The legal process is dragging out, but there is still some small chance of stopping this pipeline. I'm not going to, deceive you and say it's a great chance. I don't think it has that terrific of a chance in the legal system, but a chance is a chance. But I'm out here. I did a video live from here yesterday, which we'll be putting up on youtube.com/TYTpolitics shortly. But I wanted to get into our friend President Trump. So, I was no fan of President Obama. I think that a lot of these presidents like to talk in populist tones when on their campaign trail. We gotta get out of every other country. Enough building schools in Afghanistan and elsewhere, and not in America. We heard that from Obama when he ran, and we heard this from Trump when he ran. Well, when Obama became president, suddenly he was lockstep with George W. Bush. He was just killing people in different ways, like droning the rest of the world, which, by the way, creates more terrorism than it kills. As you know, human nature, if your family gets blown up or your friends get blown up, you don't say, oh, let me go bring the people who blew up my family flowers. You kind of would want revenge. So that's what we're seeing now with President Trump, who obviously dropped bombs on Syria a week and a half ago, and yesterday dropped the largest non-nuclear bomb the U.S. has ever dropped on Afghanistan, which they cite as a, quote, tactical move. The GBU-43/B massive ordnance air blast bomb was dropped Thursday night on a network of underground tunnels that ISIS has been using to stage attacks on government forces. So I'm going to get into this for a second. First of all, ISIS is not only in Afghanistan. ISIS is in Yemen. ISIS is in Somalia. ISIS is in Pakistan. ISIS is all over the place. So we're going to start dropping bombs everywhere in the Middle East? I mean, we already have been. But Trump's going to just bomb. I don't think there's any long-term strategy here in terms of actually defeating terrorism, because you don't defeat terrorism with bombs. Because terrorism is it's an idea. It's ideals. And part of the twisted ideas that make them want to come and kill us is because we're bombing their entire region and killing innocent civilians. So since Trump has neocons around him who basically, walk around with a big stick and think war first, ask questions later, we're creating more problems than we're actually solving. But what I wanted to get in bigger scheme, I told you covering the campaign last year that I knew watching Donald Trump that this was all nonsense. I knew most of the things he was saying he actually wasn't going to follow through on. I knew he was a really good used car salesman. He was, like Obama. Obama and him had a way with words, very different words and very different styles, but Trump was very successful. I was in rallies in Michigan. I was in rallies in Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania. And let me tell you, those people, they're not all racist. Those people, their jobs and their economic lives have been decimated over the last 25 to 30 years by a U.S. government that chose to work for corporations rather than work for their people. So they sold their jobs overseas. They've really just totally gone away with actually investing in these cities and these states and these areas. And what you have was American citizens that believed a reality TV star / used car salesman was going to actually bring back jobs, was going to untangle us from all these engagements and wars overseas. And pretty much in 2.5 weeks, well, he's been doing it since he became president, Donald Trump has proved he was a con man and is a con man. And now, apparently, his base is starting to revolt, shockingly, which frankly is good news for progressives and just better news for the country. I think resistance to Donald Trump is a terrific thing. I'll read you a little bit from Politico. Donald Trump's true believers are losing the faith. As Trump struggles to keep his campaign promises and flirts with political moderation, his most steadfast supporters, from veteran advisors to anti-immigration activists to the volunteers who dropped their jobs to help elect him, are increasingly dismayed by the direction of his presidency. So, this is good and this is bad. They're dismayed because they want, way more radical shit. They want to put the wall up. They want the gold, They want to get every last Muslim out of the country, every last Mexican out of the country. They like to blame other people for the economic woes that the U.S. government put on them. So it's the Mexicans' fault, it's the Muslims' fault, all that. So the fact that Trump hasn't done that yet, they are starting to move away. The fact that Trump is now focusing on the war on terror in air quotes, they don't like that because Trump really rose to power saying, listen, enough with focusing on other people's problems. We have to focus on America. As he said, it's a mess. It's a disaster. Well, dropping bombs on Syria and Afghanistan, killing, we never get the actual numbers, but there are innocent civilians being killed in these strikes. Some more. Their complaints range from Trump's embrace of an interventionist foreign policy to his less hawkish tone on China. If you didn't notice, literally for years, not before he ran for president, Donald Trump, China, they're getting away with murder. They're misbehaving. We gotta go after China. They're currency manipulators. All of a sudden, China's not a currency manipulator anymore. President Trump. Listen, most politicians are full of shit, but at least they're subtly full of shit over an extended period of time. Trump has just literally, within 2.5 weeks, it's extreme makeover, President Trump. So they're angry about his embrace of interventionist foreign policy, his embrace is less hawkish tone on China, his marginalization of his nationalist chief strategist, Steve Bannon. He's not a nationalist, he's a racist anti-Semite, but I digress. But the crux of their disillusionment, interviews with nearly 24 Trump loyalists reveal, is a belief that Trump, the candidate, bears little resemblance to Trump, the president. Go figure, right? He's failing in their view, to deliver on his promise of a transformative America First agenda, driven by hard-edge populism. Well, what I'm confused about for these people now, all of a sudden, backing away, why are they just realizing this? Did they not get an idea when he put the CEO of ExxonMobil in as the Secretary of State? Let that sink in. I don't think people have truly understood how absolutely horrifying it is that we have put the CEO of ExxonMobil, who is literally leading, is at the head of the table for destroying our planet, is now our chief diplomat. Trump put in as EPA administrator a bought-off Oklahoma attorney general who takes millions and billions of dollars from fossil fuel companies, doesn't believe in climate change. He is controlling our environmental protection. He's put in as energy secretary Rick Perry, who 3 years ago wanted to do away with the energy department. He has laced his administration with Goldman Sachs bankers and Wall Street executives. His Treasury Secretary is a former Wall Street executive. His chief of the National Council on Economics was I believe, chief executive at Goldman Sachs. So you're just realizing now that he's not a populist? I'm not trying to rub it in and say, guys, I told you so, but I mean, I told you so. So, earlier this week, Vojovidic launched a Facebook group called The Concerned Support Base of President Trump, which quickly drew several dozen signups. She also changed the banner on her Facebook page to a picture of Bannon accompanied by the declaration, "Mr. President, I stand with Steve Bannon." As we know, the corporate media is infatuated with the palace intrigue. Is Bannon going to go? Is he going to stay? Is the Wall Street Democrats in charge in the White House, or is it Steve Bannon? The swiftness and abruptness of Trump's shift from bomb-throwing populist outsider to a more mainstream brand of republicanism has taken the president's stalwarts by surprise. Quote, "It was like, here's the chance to do something different, and that's why people's hopes are dashed," said Lee Stranahan, who, as a former writer at Breitbart News, once worked with Bannon. There was always the question of, did he really believe this stuff? Yeah, I told you he didn't believe this stuff. Apparently the answer is not as much as you'd like. So, what does this all mean, really? Well, I think Donald Trump, at his essence, only cares about Donald Trump. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's not an anything. He's an opportunist. So really what Donald Trump as president wants is he wants to create jobs at any cost. He doesn't care if they're good jobs. He doesn't care if they're part-time jobs. He doesn't care about any of that. He just wants on a little board, he wants it to say 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 jobs created in a month. Whether that destroys our planet by totally taking away all environmental regulations, whether that destroys our financial system by totally taking away all financial regulations, whether that destroys our planet by letting the rich and Wall Street run rampant, he doesn't care. A job is a job to Donald Trump. Because as he said in his opening speech, obviously in his opening campaign speech, one of the more egregious things was his comments about Mexicans. I also thought it was kind of egregious and a little scary when he said, "I'm going to be the greatest jobs president God ever created." Well, I think President Trump is now moving away from this nationalist, fiery America First stuff because Wall Street's running Donald Trump like any other bought-off politician. So Donald Trump, to create jobs, is going with the Wall Street wing. So he's taking away the financial regulations. He's taking away the environmental regulations. He's, making stuff harder on people to buy mortgages. All this, it's all connected. So Trump, he ran. Not NATO is obsolete. This week, NATO is no longer obsolete. His reasoning: they appointed someone to do something. So this is why. And again, I'm not saying this as a Homer or a Bernie bro, but this is why Bernie Sanders was such an opportunity, and why, as I reported, I made that clear. Because you don't focus when you're electing a president on what they're saying now. You focus on what they've done in the past. Bernie Sanders had the same exact message for the last 40 to 50 years of his life. Bernie Sanders pushed the same exact legislation for the last 30 to 40 years of his life. Bernie Sanders, there's a reason he makes the least amount of money as a U.S. Senator. He's not exactly poor. He's doing okay. Bernie Sanders' actions speak louder than words, and his actions have been consistent. So when you look at someone like Trump, Trump capitalized on his anti-establishment fervor. But look no further than the corporate Democratic Party for why we're in the situation we're in now. The trolls and the haters like to blame me. And they like to blame Michael Tracy or Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald or independent media who said, no, we're not going to just not cover Hillary Clinton critically and close our eyes so that, she could become president. That's not the job. That's not what journalists do. But the Democratic Party ignored every poll that showed Bernie Sanders beating Donald Trump by 10 to 15 points. The Democratic Party ignored every poll that showed Hillary Clinton has the highest unfavorability and negatives of any Democratic candidate or any candidate, period, other than Donald Trump. They rolled the dice that Hillary Clinton, it's Donald Trump. We'll make him too unpalatable and she'll win. And now we have President Trump, who, honestly, if you ask me, to his true believers who wanted him to be as radical could be, this is bad news that he's modernizing and becoming just another establishment shill. To me, this is good news. I could deal with tax cuts for the rich, because we could undo that. I could deal with, I don't want to say I could deal with it, but I could deal with someone trying to take a machete to the environment, because he's not going to be able to do that without mass resistance. And with President Obama, there was not that mass resistance, because it was a nice man who spoke well, and people were asleep. But the bottom line is, as I told you during the campaign, Trump is a con man. He is dangerous, but a lot of the stuff he said he was going to do was to get elected, because he, I'll give him credit, was an expert and could read the mood of the country way earlier than most people. It's not a coincidence that he started with this birtherism in 2011. What happened in 2010? The Tea Party wave. Donald Trump saw that this country was moving towards a more xenophobic, a more white man's last stand. Look, and he also saw the economic numbers and the pain in the Midwest. So credit where credit is due for that. But the bottom line is, which Donald Trump would I rather fight as a progressive, a nationalist nut job, who basically wants to make our country, Whitey McWhite Christian fundamentalist country and get the Muslims out and the Mexicans out and all this, or just your cardboard cutout Chamber of Commerce Republican with a little more racism? I'll take the latter, because I think he's beatable, and I think you're going to start seeing that in 2018. But it starts from a progressive point of view. We gotta walk and chew gum at the same time. This whole resistance thing, you cannot only focus on resistance against Donald Trump. You have got to focus on resistance against the corporate Democratic establishment, because it is not a strategy to replace Donald Trump with Cory Booker. It is not a strategy to replace Donald Trump with, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Then we're just back to where we were. And by the way, having covered the country the last year before Donald Trump was president, where we were is not good. I always get in fights with my older brother, who I love him, but he works at a hedge fund in New York. He lives in a bubble. He thinks the economy's doing better and all these things. I say, go out into the country, talk to thousands of people like I do, and then tell me it's anecdotal. So I could go on and on about this, but basically you're starting to see the Trump fanatics, the Trump army are starting to have buyer's remorse. And I say, couldn't come soon enough. I'll be going live again later today. Again, I'm from Little Creek Camp. There's going to be a video up pretty soon after this on this YouTube channel with the video I did yesterday from Little Creek Camp. It is a kind of a mini Standing Rock, much smaller. There's only 40 people here, but they are asking for more people to come. They are still in peaceful demonstration against the Dakota Access Pipeline, which has lawsuits underway still over eminent domain in Iowa. So thank you for watching. YouTube.com/TYTPolitics. You can follow me on Twitter at JORDANCHARITON. Have a great weekend.